Hello, you tired little peeps. It's that time once again. So let's snuggle up fast because tonight we're traveling. Back in time to look at the dusty ledgers, the endless counting of copper and silver, and the quiet, bureaucratic tedium that filled the days of a Roman tax collector. So if you are new to the channel or returning, liking the video significantly helps. Also, please let me know where you're listening in from and what time it is for you. Now get comfortable and let's begin. To understand the life of a Roman tax collector, or a publicanus, as they were known in the tongue of the empire, we must first strip away the images of grand battles and marble palaces. We must retreat into the shadows of the colonnades, into the small, stifling rooms where the air is thick with the smell of dried ink, melting wax, and the metallic tang of old coins. This is not a world of glory. It is a world of arithmetic. It is a world where the day does not begin with the sunrise over the hills of Rome, but with the opening of a heavy wooden chest and the scratching of a stylus against a tablet. Imagine, if you will, the texture of that silence. It is early morning in a province far from the comforts of the capital, perhaps in the humid air of Asia Minor or the dry, dusty winds of Syria. The sun has not yet fully risen, but the publicanus is already awake. His eyes are heavy, tired from the previous night's calculations that did not quite balance. The oil lamp on his desk flickers low, casting long, dancing shadows against the peeling plaster of the wall. There is a specific kind of exhaustion that comes from working with numbers. It is a dull ache behind the eyes, a dryness in the throat, and a stiffness in the fingers that comes from clutching a pen or counting endless stacks of sestertii. Being a publicanus was to be caught in a relentless machine of administration. To the average citizen walking the streets, the tax collector was a figure of annoyance, sometimes fear, but mostly resentment. But to the man sitting behind the desk, the reality was far more mundane and far more crushing. It was a life defined by the burden of accuracy. Every single coin that passed through his hands had to be accounted for. Every bushel of grain, every jar of oil, every crate of wine entering or leaving a port had to be weighed, measured, and recorded. Let us pause and consider the tools of this trade, for they were the constant companions of our weary subject. The primary tool was the tabula, the wax tablet. It was a simple object, a wooden frame filled with dark beeswax, but it was also a cruel master. The wax had to be smooth. If it was too cold, it would crack under the pressure of the stylus. If it was too warm, the letters would blur and lose their shape, making the records illegible. The publicanus would spend hours smoothing the wax with the flat end of his stylus, erasing the mistakes of the day, preparing the surface for a new list of debts and payments. The sound of that stylus, scratch, scratch, smooth, scratch, was the soundtrack of his life. It was a rhythmic, hypnotic sound, one that could easily lull a person into a trance, were it not for the anxiety of making an error. And then there was the papyrus. For permanent records, wax would not suffice. The final tallies, the letters to the partners back in Rome, the official reports to the provincial governor, these had to be written on papyrus scrolls. Papyrus was expensive, and it was fragile. It required a steady hand and a good ink. The ink, usually a mixture of soot, gum, and water, had a peculiar earthy scent. It stained the fingers black. A publicanus could always be identified by his hands, ink-stained fingertips and calluses on the thumb and forefinger from handling coins. The coins themselves were a source of endless physical fatigue. We often think of money as an abstract concept, a number on a screen. But for the Roman tax collector, money was heavy. It was physical. It was dirty. Coins circulated through thousands of hands before reaching the tax office. They were greasy with sweat, covered in the dust of the road, sometimes sticky with wine or oil, and they had to be counted, one by one. Unus, duo, tres, quatuor. The counting never stopped. The metallic clinking of bronze asses and silver denarii dropping into a box is a sound that might seem pleasant at first, but after the 10,000th time, it becomes a drill into the skull. But why did it suck? Why was this profession, which was undeniably lucrative for the top-tier investors, such a miserable existence for the men on the ground? To answer this, we must look at the structure of the system itself. The Roman Republic, and later the Empire, did not have a large, centralized state agency to collect taxes for much of its history. Instead, they outsourced this duty. They privatized it. The state wanted its revenue upfront or guaranteed, and they didn't want the hassle of collecting it coin by coin from millions of subjects. So, the censors in Rome held auctions. These were grand, stressful events held in the Forum. Companies of private citizens, the Societates Publicanorum, would bid on the contracts to collect taxes in a specific province for a set period, usually 5 years. The company that promised the highest total sum to the state won the contract. It sounds simple, like a business deal. But imagine the pressure. The partners in Rome, the wealthy knights or equites, put up their fortunes as collateral. They promised millions of sesterces to the state treasury. And then they sent their agents, the men we are focusing on tonight, out into the world to make sure they got that money back, plus a profit. The man sitting in the dusty office in Syria or Gaul was not usually the wealthy partner. He was an employee, or a junior partner, or a freedman working for the company. He carried the weight of that massive contract on his shoulders. He knew that back in Rome, powerful men were waiting for their return. If the harvest was bad due to a drought, the tax collector still had to collect. If a war broke out and trade routes were cut off, the contract still stood. The anxiety of meeting the quota was a constant low-level hum in the back of his mind, like a tinnitus that never went away. He was the interface between a distant, demanding Rome and a local population that wanted nothing to do with him. He was socially isolated. To the Romans, he was a necessary evil, a man who touched dirty money. To the locals, he was a parasite. He had no true friends in the province. When he walked through the market to buy his own bread or repair his sandals, conversation would stop. Eyes would avert. He was a ghost in the very community he monitored. Let us drift back to the office. The morning light is now fully filtering through the small window, illuminating the dust motes dancing in the air. The dust of the archives. This is a specific kind of dust, composed of deteriorating papyrus fibers, dry earth tracked in from the sandals of messengers, and the fine powder of eroded stone. It settles on everything. It settles on the shelves stacked high with scrolls. It settles on the water jug in the corner. It settles in the lungs. The publicanus coughs, a dry, hacking cough, and reaches for his cup. The water is tepid. He looks at the ledger open before him. It is a column of names, hundreds of names. Some are Latin, some are Greek, some are Punic or Celtic. Beside each name is a figure, a tax obligation, the tributum soli, the land tax, the tributum capitis, the head tax, the portoria, the customs dues. Each tax had its own rules, its own exemptions, its own complex calculations. Take the land tax, for instance. It wasn't just a flat fee. It depended on the yield. The publicanus had to know the quality of the soil in a district he might never have visited personally. He had to rely on reports from underlings, reports that were often vaguely written or purposefully misleading. He had to estimate how many bushels of wheat a field in the valley should produce versus a field on the hillside. He had to calculate the value of that wheat at current market prices, which fluctuated daily. He picks up his abacus. The Roman abacus was a portable calculator, a metal plate with grooves and small beads made of stone or glass. He slides the beads. Clack, clack, clack. He is calculating the tithe on a shipment of olive oil reported from a southern village. The report says the shipment was 50 amphorae. But was it? Was it really 50? Or was it 60 and 10 were hidden? He has to decide whether to send a patrol to check, which costs money and time, or to accept the figure and risk falling short on his quota. The decision hangs over him, paralyzing him for a moment. He rubs his temples. The headache is starting early today. There is a knock at the door. It is not a friendly knock. It is the hesitant, fearful knock of a petitioner, or the brisk, impatient knock of a courier. The publicanus sighs. The silence of the morning is broken. The day's true labor is about to begin. He is not a warrior defending the borders. He is not a senator making grand speeches. He is a man with a stylus, trapped between the insatiable hunger of Rome and the stubborn resistance of the world. And he is very, very tired. But before we open that door and see who is disturbing the dust of the office, let us linger for a moment longer on the quiet, the moment before the work starts. The publicanus looks at his hands. He sees the ink stain on his thumb. He tries to rub it off, but it is deep in the skin. It is a mark of his caste, a mark of the ledger. He takes a deep breath, inhaling the scent of wax and old paper, and prepares to slide the first bead of the abacus for the day. The knock at the door was, as expected, a courier with a fresh stack of waybills. But let us leave the dim sanctuary of the office for a moment. While the senior publicanus struggles with his ledger indoors, many of his colleagues, the men on the ground, the portatores, are stationed outside, at the very edges of the empire's circulatory system. We move now to the customs station, the statio. Imagine a wooden shack, hastily constructed near a dusty crossroads or perched precariously on a dockside. The wood is bleached white by the relentless sun. The roof is thatched with dried reeds that rustle incessantly in the wind, a sound like dry bones rubbing together. Inside this shack, the air is stagnant, trapped, and boiling hot. Outside, the world is a chaotic stream of movement, but for the tax collector standing at the barrier, time seems to stand still. The job here is the porteria, the collection of customs dues. Every wagon, every pack mule, every ship that crosses a provincial boundary must stop here. They must stop, and they must wait. And the man who makes them wait is you, the publicanus. The sun is higher now, beating down on the road. You can see the heat rising in shimmering waves from the packed dirt. A line of carts stretches back as far as the eye can see. The drivers are impatient. They are shouting at their oxen, swatting at flies, and cursing the delay. But you cannot rush. Speed is the enemy of accuracy, and accuracy is the only thing keeping you from being fined or flogged by your superiors. A wagon pulls up to the barrier. It is a heavy, lumbering thing, its wheels caked in dried mud. The driver looks down at you. His face is a mask of weary irritation. He hands you a declaration, a scrap of papyrus listing his cargo. It says, 50 measures of wheat, 10 bolts of undyed wool, 3 jars of honey. Now comes the tedious physical reality of the job. You cannot trust the paper. You never trust the paper. You have to check. You signal the driver to climb down. He groans, his knees popping as he descends. You walk to the back of the wagon. The smell hits you first. It is the smell of unwashed animals, of the driver's sweat, of the manure on the wheels, and the faint, sweet scent of the honey. You have to climb up. The wood of the wagon bed is rough and splintery. You begin the search. You have a long metal rod, a probe. You thrust it into the sacks of wheat. Thwump. You feel the resistance of the grain. You pull it out. Nothing but wheat. You do it again. Thwump. And again. You are looking for something hard hidden in the soft grain, perhaps a stash of coins or a small statue or gems that are being smuggled to avoid the high luxury tax. There is no thrill of the hunt here. There is only the repetition of the motion. Your shoulder aches from the thrusting. The dust from the grain sacks puffs up into your face, coating your eyelashes, entering your nose. You sneeze, but you cannot wipe your face properly because your hands are covered in wheat dust. Next, the wool. You have to unroll the bolts. The fabric is heavy and coarse. It scratches your skin. You unroll one, check the center, and then, this is the worst part, you have to roll it back up. It never rolls back up as neatly as it was before. The driver is watching you, his arms crossed, tapping his foot. He hates you for making a mess of his goods. You hate him for bringing so many goods. It is a mutual, silent exchange of resentment. You move to the jars of honey. They are sealed with wax. To check them properly, you would have to break the seal. If you break the seal, the merchant will claim the goods are spoiled or devalued. If you don't break the seal, he might be smuggling gold dust in the honey. You hesitate. You tap the side of the jar. It sounds solid. You look at the seal. It looks undisturbed. You decide to let it pass. It is a gamble. Every decision is a gamble. Now, the math. You climb down from the wagon, your sandals kicking up a small cloud of dust. You go back to your little table in the shade of the shack. You have to calculate the tax. The rate varies. Is this an import or an export? Is it crossing into Italy or just moving between provinces? Let's say the rate is 2.5%, the quadragesima. You have to determine the value of the goods. The merchant says the wool is worth 20 denarii a bolt. You know that in the local market it's trading for 25. If you accept his value, the state loses money. If you insist on your value, he will argue. Arguments take time. The line of wagons behind him is getting longer. The noise of the crowd is rising. A donkey brays loudly, a harsh grating sound that cuts through the heat. You decide to value it at 22. You begin the calculation. 2.5% of the total value. You slide the beads on your abacus again. The metal beads are hot to the touch now, having sat in the sun. You work the sum. You write it down on a receipt. You hand the receipt to the driver. He grumbles, digs into a pouch, and counts out the coins. You have to check the coins. Are they real? You bite one gently, a habit you picked up from an old veteran. It tastes metallic and salty. It seems soft enough. It's lead-plated silver, perhaps, but it passes the quick test. You toss it into your strong box. Clink. One wagon done. You look up. There are 40 more in the line. The afternoon drags on. The heat intensifies. The flies become more aggressive. These are not the slow, lazy flies of the evening. These are the persistent, buzzing flies of the marketplace. They land on your neck. They land on the stylus. They land on the rim of your water cup. You swat them away, but they return instantly to the same spot. It is a battle of attrition you cannot win. Sometimes the cargo is not dry goods. Sometimes it is livestock. a herd of sheep. You have to count them. Have you ever tried to count sheep that are moving, bleeding, and shifting around each other in a pen? It is not a sleep-inducing exercise when you are on the job. It is a frustration. 1, 2, 3, 4. Wait, did that one move to the left? You have to start over. The shepherd looks at you with contempt. He knows exactly how many sheep he has. He thinks you are stupid for not seeing it at a glance. Or perhaps it is fish. Salted fish. Salsamenta. The barrels are leaking a brine that smells pungent and sharp. It attracts wasps. You have to open a barrel to ensure it is indeed fish and not wine. The smell rushes out, overwhelming, sticking to your clothes. You will smell like salted fish for the rest of the day. Your wife will complain when you get home. Your children will wrinkle their noses. The job follows you home. And amidst this physical tedium, there is the ever-present fear of the delator, the informer. The Roman system encouraged citizens to report on tax collectors who were corrupt or lax. If that driver with the honey was actually a spy, and you let him pass without opening the jar, and he was smuggling, he could report you. You could lose your job. You could lose your status. You could be ruined. So, you become paranoid. You start checking everything. You open every jar. You unroll every bolt of cloth. The line stops moving. The merchants start shouting. A riot threatens to break out. You are just one man with a stylus, facing a mob of angry traders in the baking sun. You call for the guard, a bored soldier leaning on a spear nearby. He pushes the crowd back lazily. He doesn't care. He gets paid regardless of the tax revenue. You are alone in your diligence. As the sun begins to dip lower, casting long orange shadows across the dusty road, your throat is parched. You have said the same phrases hundreds of times today. Open this. What is the value? Pay the sum. Next. Your voice is hoarse. Your mind is numb. The numbers have lost their meaning. They are just shapes you manipulate. You look at the strong box. It is full. It is heavy. You will have to transport this box to the central treasury in the city tonight. That means hiring guards. That means worrying about bandits on the road. The work does not end when the sun goes down. The anxiety merely shifts from collection to protection. But for now, there is still one more wagon. The driver is an old man transporting pottery. Low value, high fragility. You sigh. You pick up the probe. You step out of the shade, back into the heat, and prepare to count the pots. Unus, duo, tres. We leave the dusty chaos of the customs checkpoint and travel inland, away from the roads and into the fields. The sun has moved directly overhead, bleaching the color from the landscape, turning the green of the crops into a hazy, shimmering yellow. Here, the silence is deeper, broken only by the chirping of cicadas, a relentless, rhythmic rasping that feels like the pulse of the heat itself. This is the domain of the decumanus, the tax collector responsible for the tithe, the 10% of the harvest owed to Rome. If the customs shed was a place of confrontation, the field is a place of estimation, of geometry, and of weighting. The publicanus stands at the edge of a wheat field. He wears a wide-brimmed hat made of straw to shield his eyes, but the heat radiates up from the earth, penetrating the soles of his sandals. He is not alone. He is accompanied by a slave carrying a measuring rod, the decempeda, and a surveyor's cross, the groma. The task here is deceptively simple. Assess the yield of the field before the harvest begins. But nature is rarely simple. The field is not a perfect square. It is an irregular polygon, shaped by the curve of a stream on one side and a rocky outcrop on the other. Rome demands precision from chaos. The publicanus must impose a grid of numbers upon this organic, uneven land. He steps into the field. The wheat is tall, brushing against his waist. The stalks are dry and brittle. As he walks, the dust rises, not the gray dust of the road, but a fine, golden chaff that sticks to sweat like glue. He stops in the center of a section. He must take a sample. He marks out a small square, 10 feet by 10 feet. The slave drives stakes into the hard ground. Thud, thud, thud. The sound is dull, absorbed instantly by the vastness of the open air. Now they must count the stalks. Or rather, they must cut the wheat in this square, thresh it, weigh the grain, and then extrapolate that weight to the entire acreage of the field. It is a process of excruciating slowness. The publicanus watches as the slave cuts the wheat with a sickle. Swish, crack, swish, crack. The rhythm is hypnotic. The sun beats down on the back of his neck. He feels a trickle of sweat run down his spine. He pulls out his wax tablet. He begins to draw a diagram of the field. He tries to calculate the area. He breaks the irregular shape into triangles and rectangles. He measures the base of a triangle. He measures the height. He multiplies. He divides. The numbers float in his mind, detached from the physical reality of the grain. Area equals base times height divided by 2. But what if the base is curved? He has to estimate. He squints at the boundary line. Is that rock inside the taxable area or outside? If he includes it, the farmer will complain that he is being taxed on barren stone. If he excludes it, he might be underestimating the total land. He decides to draw a straight line through the middle of the curve. A compromise, a fiction. The farmer stands at the edge of the field, watching. He says nothing. He is a silhouette against the bright sky, leaning on a hoe. His silence is heavy. It is a judgment. He knows this land. He knows that the patch near the stream always rots because it's too wet. He knows the patch near the rocks is scorched by the sun. He knows the yield will be lower than the publicanus estimates. But he waits. He knows that to argue now is useless. The argument will come later, when the tax bill is presented. The sample is threshed. The grain is poured into a small scale held by the publicanus. He watches the needle quiver. It settles. He notes the weight. Now, the multiplication. If 10 square feet yields this much, then 10,000 square feet yields. He does the math in his head first, then checks it on the tablet. The numbers are large. The tax owed will be significant. He feels a twinge of something, not quite guilt, but a weary acknowledgement of the burden he is placing on this man. But the feeling passes. The state needs grain. The legions need bread. The mob in Rome needs the dole. The chain of supply starts here, in this hot, quiet field, with this stylus and this scale. They move to the next section, and the next. The afternoon wears on. The scenery does not change. Wheat, stakes, measuring rod, tablet. Wheat stakes, measuring rod, tablet. The repetition dulls the senses. The world narrows down to the tip of the stylus and the dry scratch of the wax. Sometimes the publicanus has to deal with tree crops, olives and vines. These are even harder to assess. You cannot just measure the area. You have to count the trees. You have to inspect the health of the vines. He walks through an olive grove. The trees are old, their trunks twisted and gnarled like the hands of old men. The ground is rocky and uneven. He stumbles occasionally. He has to count every tree. 104. 105. He loses count when a bird flies out of the branches, startling him. He has to start the row again. He has to judge the olives. Are they plump? Are they shriveled? He pulls a branch down to look closer. The leaves are dusty, a dull silver green. He sees spots on the fruit. A pest? If it is a pest, the oil will be poor quality. The tax revenue will drop. He has to make a note. Row 4, Section B, Signs of Blight. He moves to the vineyard. The vines are trained on trellises. The grapes are hanging low, heavy and purple. The smell here is different, sweet, fermenting, earthy. The wasps are here too, drawn to the sugar. He walks down the long, straight rows. The perspective lines converge in the distance, creating a sense of infinity, an infinite corridor of grapes. He has to estimate the volume of wine these grapes will produce. It is a guessing game played with serious consequences. He looks at a cluster. He squeezes a grape. It bursts, sticky juice coating his fingers. He tastes it. Sweet. Good sugar content. High alcohol potential. Valuable wine. He records his estimate. The farmer will likely turn this into wine himself or sell the grapes to a press. The publicanus needs to know where they go. He needs to track the movement of the harvest from the field to the press to the jar. It is a web of transactions he must untangle in his mind. As the sun begins to lower, casting long shadows that stretch across the fields, the publicanus feels the fatigue in his legs. He has walked miles today, back and forth, up and down, circling fields, pacing rows. His sandals are worn thin. His feet are dusty and sore. He gathers his tools. The slave packs the measuring rod. They walk back towards the road. The farmer is still there, watching them leave. The publicanus nods to him, a brief, professional acknowledgement. The farmer does not nod back. The walk back to the town is slow. The air is cooling slightly, but the ground is still radiating heat. The publicanus thinks about the data he has collected. Tonight, by the light of the oil lamp, he will have to transfer these rough notes into the official ledger. He will have to formalize the estimates. He will have to commit the numbers to history. He thinks about the nature of his work. He is capturing the world in numbers. He is reducing the sweat of the farmer, the fertility of the soil, the unpredictability of the weather, into a neat column of figures. It feels reductive. It feels dry. But it is necessary. Without him, the empire does not eat. Without him, the chaotic abundance of nature cannot be translated into the orderly power of the state. He reaches the town gates as the twilight settles. The sky is a bruised purple. He shows his credentials to the guard. He walks through the streets, now filling with the smells of cooking fires. He is hungry, but he is too tired to eat much. He just wants to sit. He just wants to wash the dust from his face. He enters his quarters. He places the tablet on the table. He looks at it one last time before the light fades completely. The diagram of the field stares back at him, a geometric abstraction of a living place. He closes his eyes. In the darkness behind his eyelids, he still sees the rows of vines, the waves of wheat, the endless, repeating patterns of the harvest. We move now from the open fields, where the air was at least breathable, back into the suffocating confinement of the town. But not to the office we saw this morning. No, we must descend deeper. We are going to the tabularium, the archive. If the fields were the lungs of the operation, breathing in the harvest, the archive is the memory. And like human memory, it is cluttered, dark, and often difficult to navigate. This is where the publicanus goes when the numbers don't add up. This is where he goes to chase the ghosts of unpaid debts. The archive is located in the basement of the local basilica or administrative center. To get there, you have to walk down a flight of stone steps, worn smooth by generations of sandals. The air gets cooler as you descend, but it also gets staler. It smells of damp stone, old parchment, and that peculiar sweet scent of decaying wax. There are no windows here. The only light comes from the oil lamp you carry in your hand. The flame flickers in the draft, making the shadows jump and dance along the rows of wooden shelves. These shelves stretch from the floor to the low, vaulted ceiling. They are packed tight with scrolls and tablets, thousands of them. Imagine the sheer volume of information stored in this small, dark room. Every tax record for the last 20 years, every dispute, every exemption granted by a governor who is long dead, every list of citizens, every property deed. It is a labyrinth of bureaucracy. The publicanus is here to find a specific record. A dispute has arisen over a plot of land on the outskirts of the town. The current owner, a merchant named Lucius, claims he is exempt from the tributum soli because his grandfather was granted immunity for service in the legions. He has no proof, only a story. The publicanus must find the truth. He walks down the narrow aisle. The dust is thick here, undisturbed for years. He coughs, the sound echoing flatly off the stone walls. He runs his finger along the tags hanging from the ends of the scrolls. Year of the consulship of Cicero and Antonius. Year of the consulship of Caesar and Bibulus. He is looking for a record from 30 years ago. He finds the section. The scrolls are piled haphazardly. Some have been chewed by mice. He pulls one out carefully. The papyrus is brittle. It crinkles loudly as he unrolls it. He holds the lamp closer. The ink has faded to a pale brown. The handwriting is cramped and cursive, difficult to decipher. He begins to read. It is a list of grain requisitions, not what he needs. He rolls it back up. He pulls another. A list of court judgments, not it. He pulls a third, a census return. He has to be careful. If he tears the scroll, he is destroying a legal document. The tension is in his fingertips. He moves slowly. Unroll, scan, re-roll, unroll, scan, re-roll. Minutes turn into hours. The silence of the archive is absolute. There is no sound of the city above, no carts, no shouting, no wind, just the rustle of dry paper and the publicanus's own breathing. It is a sensory deprivation tank of boredom. His eyes strain in the dim light. The letters seem to swim before him. Lucius. Lucius. He finds a Lucius, but it is the wrong family name. He keeps looking. He finds a stack of wooden tablets in the corner. They are bound together with leather thongs. These are the commentariae, the daily logs of a previous tax collector. Perhaps the answer is here. He sits on a small three-legged stool that wobbles on the uneven floor. He unties the thongs. The wood creaks. He reads the notes of a man who sat in his chair decades ago. Heavy rains this month. Collection difficult. The locals are restless. He feels a strange kinship with this ghost. They shared the same headaches, the same frustrations. But he doesn't have time for sentiment. He needs facts. He scans the entries. Calends of March, Ides of April. He is looking for a grant of immunity. Finally, he sees a reference. Property of the veteran Marcus, father of Lucius, granted exemption status by decree of the proconsul. There it is, the proof. But wait. He reads on. Exemption valid for 10 years. 10 years. That was 30 years ago. The exemption has expired. Lucius has been evading taxes for 20 years. The publicanus feels a jolt of satisfaction. It is the thrill of the hunt, the solving of a puzzle. But it is immediately followed by the realization of what comes next. He has to calculate 20 years of back taxes, with penalties, with interest. He pulls out his own tablet. He begins to do the math. The principal sum is large. The interest is staggering. The compound interest, Rome loved compound interest, makes the figure astronomical. He sits in the dark, surrounded by the dust of the past, and calculates the ruin of a man he barely knows. He writes the numbers down. They are just marks on wax, but they represent the loss of a home, the seizure of property, perhaps the selling of slaves. It is a violent act committed with a stylus. He finishes the calculation. He stands up, his knees stiff from sitting on the low stool. He rolls up the scroll that provided the evidence. He places it back on the shelf. He has to remember exactly where he put it, in case he needs to produce it in court. He marks the spot with a small shard of pottery. He picks up his lamp. The oil is running low. The flame is getting smaller. He needs to leave before he is plunged into total darkness. The archive is not a place you want to be trapped in. The weight of all that history, all those debts, feels oppressive in the dark. He walks back to the stairs. The air seems to get lighter as he ascends. He emerges back into the hallway of the basilica. The light of the late afternoon seems blindingly bright after the gloom of the basement. He blinks, his eyes watering. He walks back to his office. He has the ammunition he needs now. He will summon Lucius tomorrow. It will be an unpleasant meeting. There will be shouting. There will be tears. There might be threats. But the publicanus has the scroll. He has the truth of the archive. He sits at his desk and cleans his hands. They are covered in the grime of the basement, a black, sticky dust that smells of rot. He scrubs them with a rough cloth, but the dirt is stubborn. It is as if the past refuses to let go. He looks at the ledger where he will enter the new debt. It is a fresh page, clean, white, waiting to be filled. He dips his pen in the ink. He writes the name, Lucius. He writes the amount. The act of writing it makes it real. The debt exists now. It is a tangible thing, heavy as a stone. And he, the publicanus, is the one who must carry it until it is paid. He leans back in his chair. The sun is setting now. The room is filling with shadows again. But these are the familiar shadows of his own office, not the spooky, ancient shadows of the archive. He feels a deep, penetrating weariness. Not just physical tired, but a weariness of the soul. He wonders if, in 30 years, another man will come down those stairs, looking for his records. Will another publicanus sit on that wobbly stool and read his notes? Will they feel a kinship with him? Or will he just be another name on a tag, another ghost in the machine of the empire? He blows out the lamp on his desk. The smoke rises in a thin, gray plume, vanishing into the ceiling. The work is done for the day. But the ledger remains open. It is always open. The sun has finally set, or at least it has dipped below the rooftops of the town, leaving the streets in a gray, ambiguous twilight. The publicanus locks the heavy oak door of his office. The click of the iron key turning in the lock is the signal that the official day is over. But the day itself, the sensory experience of existence, continues. And now, he must wash away the physical and metaphorical grime of his profession. He walks towards the public baths, the thermae. In any Roman town, the baths are the center of social life. They are where business is conducted, where gossip is exchanged, where politics are debated. For the average citizen, it is a place of community. For the tax collector, it is a place of solitary confinement in a crowd. He arrives at the entrance. The building is imposing, smelling of wood smoke from the furnaces that heat the water. He pays the small entrance fee, the quadrans. The coin he hands over is one he collected earlier that day. He knows its weight. He knows the face stamped on it. He drops it into the gatekeeper's bowl. The gatekeeper does not look him in the eye. He enters the apoditerium, the changing room. It is a humid, crowded space, lined with stone benches and rows of niches in the wall for storing clothes. It smells of unwashed bodies, stale sweat, and damp wool. The noise is a cacophony, men shouting, sandals slapping on wet stone, the dull thud of heavy tunics being dropped. The publicanus finds an empty niche. He begins to undress. This is a moment of vulnerability. In the chaotic environment of the changing room, clothes thieves or furors balnearii are common. If his tunic is stolen, he will have to walk home naked, a final humiliation. He folds his tunic neatly. He places his sandals side by side. He looks around. He pays a young slave, one of the bath attendants, a small coin to watch his things. He doesn't trust the boy, but he has no choice. He steps into the tepidarium, the warm room. The air here is thick and misty. The floor is heated from below by the hypocaust system. It is pleasant on the soles of his feet, which are aching from the miles walked in the fields. He finds a spot on a marble bench and sits. This is the transition zone. The body must prepare for the heat of the next room. He sits and waits. Around him, groups of men are talking. He hears snippets of conversation. A merchant complaining about the price of grain. A veteran telling a story about a campaign in Dacia. A group of young men laughing about a girl. As he settles in, the conversation nearest to him falters. The men glance at him. They recognize him. He is the man who audited their shop last week. He is the man who questioned the purity of their silver. They shift on the bench, turning their backs to him. The circle of conversation closes, leaving him outside. He stares at the ceiling, at the moisture dripping from the vaulted arch. Drip, drip, drip. He counts the drops. It is safer than trying to make eye contact. After a suitable time, he moves to the caldarium, the hot room. The heat here is intense. Steam rises from a central plunge bath, filling the room with a white, opaque fog. It is hard to see more than a few feet in front of you. This is a blessing. The fog hides him. He steps into the hot water. It stings his skin. He sinks down until the water reaches his chin. The heat penetrates his muscles, loosening the tension in his shoulders, the stiffness in his neck caused by hunching over the ledger. For a moment, he is just a body in water. The numbers in his head, the denarii, the sestertii, the bushels, the amphorae, begin to dissolve in the steam. He closes his eyes. He listens to the sounds of the bath, the splash of water, the heavy breathing of men enduring the heat, the distant clanking of the furnace doors being opened and closed by the slaves in the basement. It is a rhythmic, industrial soundscape, but he cannot stay in the water forever. He climbs out, his skin red and steaming. Now comes the cleaning. He signals to an attendant. He pays for a massage and a scraping. The attendant pours oil onto his skin. It is cheap olive oil, thick and golden. The attendant rubs it in vigorously. The publicanus stands there, swaying slightly, as the oil is worked into his back, his arms, his legs. Then, the attendant picks up the strigil. The strigil is a curved metal tool, usually made of bronze. It looks like a sickle with a blunt edge. The attendant presses it against the publicanus's skin and scrapes. Scrape, scrape. The oil, mixed with sweat, dirt, and dead skin, is collected in the curve of the tool and flicked onto the floor. This is the exfoliation of the day. The dust of the archives is scraped away. The chaff of the wheat fields is scraped away. The grime of the coins is scraped away. The sensation is rough, almost painful, but also deeply satisfying. He watches the gray sludge piling up on the floor. It is the physical manifestation of his labor. Once he is scraped clean, he must shock the body. He moves to the frigidarium, the cold room. This room is unheated. The pool is filled with cold water. He takes a breath and plunges in. The shock is immediate. The air leaves his lungs. His heart hammers against his ribs. The cold water tightens his pores, sealing the skin. It wakes him up from the lethargy of the heat. He surfaces, gasping. He climbs out quickly, shivering. The towel he wraps around himself is rough linen, scratchy against his sensitive skin. He dries himself vigorously. He walks back to the apoditarium. He approaches his niche. His heart skips a beat. Is it empty? No. His tunic is there. The sandals are there. The slave boy is leaning against the wall, looking bored. The publicanus breathes a sigh of relief. He dresses quickly. The clean tunic feels cool against his skin. He leaves the baths. The transition from the humid, noisy interior to the outside air is jarring. The street is now fully dark. The moon is a sliver of white in the black sky. Now begins the walk home. Roman towns do not have streetlights. The streets are pitch black, illuminated only by the occasional lantern hanging outside a tavern or the torch of a passing patrol. The publicanus walks quickly. He stays in the center of the road, away from the shadows of the doorways where muggers might hide. He is a target. Everyone knows he deals with money. Everyone assumes he has a stash of coins in his house. He clutches his cloak tight around him. Every sound, a cat knocking over a pot, a shutter banging in the wind, makes him jump. He is a man who represents the power of Rome, yet he is afraid of his own neighbors. He reaches his house. It is a modest dwelling, squeezed between a bakery and a fuller's shop. The smell of urine from the fuller's shop, used for bleaching cloth, hangs in the air. He unlocks his door. He slips inside and bolts it behind him. Clunk, clunk. 2 bolts. The house is quiet. His family is there, but the atmosphere is subdued. His wife greets him with a nod. She is mending a tunic by the light of a single lamp. She does not ask him how his day was. She knows. It was the same as yesterday. It was the same as the day before. He sits at the small wooden table. Dinner is served. It is simple fare. A bowl of spelt porridge, some cheese, a few olives, and a cup of watered-down wine. He eats in silence. The spoon scraping against the wooden bowl is the only sound. Scrape, scrape. Just like the strigil, just like the stylus. He looks at his hands. They are clean now, thanks to the bath. The ink is gone, but he can still feel the phantom weight of the coins. He can still see the rows of numbers when he blinks. He finishes his meal. He pushes the bowl away. He is tired, but his mind is still active. He thinks about Lucius, the man with the debt. He thinks about the farmer in the wheat field. He thinks about the driver with the honey. Tomorrow, he will have to do it all again. The chest will open. The ledger will spread out. The abacus will click. He stands up and blows out the lamp in the dining room. The house plunges into darkness. He navigates by memory to the bedroom. He lies down on the straw mattress. It rustles beneath him. He stares up into the dark. He tries to empty his mind. He tries to focus on the silence. But the silence of a Roman night is never truly silent. There are dogs barking in the distance. There is the rumble of wheels. Carts are only allowed to move goods within the city at night to avoid congestion. The empire never sleeps. The commerce never stops. And because the commerce never stops, the tax collector can never truly rest. He lies there, waiting for sleep, counting sheep. But he doesn't just count them. In his mind, he assesses their wool quality. He estimates their market value. He calculates the tax. 1 sheep. Taxable value, 12 denarii. 2 sheep. Taxable value, 24 denarii. And so, Drifting on a sea of numbers, he finally falls asleep. The morning sun does not bring a return to the fields today. Today is a day of static confinement. It is the day of the conventus, the assize, where the provincial governor or his delegate arrives in the town to hear legal disputes. And for a publicanus, disputes are as common as grain. We find ourselves standing before the great basilica of the town. This is not a religious building, but a civic one. It is a vast, rectangular hall, a cavern of commerce and law. The building is designed to intimidate. Massive stone columns line the central nave, rising up to support a coffered ceiling that seems miles away. The floor is a chessboard of marble, cold and hard beneath the feet. The publicanus arrives early, clutching his scrolls, the evidence gathered from the dusty archive. He is not alone. The basilica is already humming with a low, continuous murmur. It is the sound of hundreds of people whispering, plotting, and rehearsing their pleas. He finds his place in the area designated for tax disputes. It is a roped-off section near the tribunal, the raised platform where the magistrate sits. There are no chairs here for the petitioners. You must stand. You must wait. The waiting is a physical ordeal. The air in the basilica is cool, trapped by the stone walls, but it is stale. It smells of old stone, the wax of polished floors, and the nervous sweat of the crowd. The publicanus shifts his weight from one foot to the other. He leans against a column, the cold marble seeping through his tunic. He watches the lichers, the magistrate's bodyguards, stand at attention. They hold the fasces, bundles of rods, with an axe head protruding. They are statues of authority, unmoving, their eyes fixed on the middle distance. They do not blink. They do not fidget. To watch them is to be hypnotized by their stillness. Time passes slowly in the basilica. There is no water clock here to mark the hours, only the slow movement of the sunbeams tracking across the floor. 1 hour, 2 hours. Finally, the magistrate enters. The crowd hushes. The rustle of fabric ceases. He ascends the tribunal. He sits in the sella curules, the ivory folding chair. He looks bored. He adjusts his toga. He signals for the first case. The voice of the herald booms out, echoing off the stone walls, distorting the names until they are barely recognizable. The case of Mumble versus Mumble. The publicanus tunes it out. It is a property dispute between two neighbors over a fallen wall. He listens to the drone of the lawyers, the advocati. They speak in a formal, archaic Latin, full of flourishes and rhetorical loops. They do not get to the point. They circle it. They talk about the ancestors of the neighbors. They talk about the sanctity of boundaries. They talk about the weather on the day the wall fell. It is a river of words, flowing endlessly, meant to wear down the opposition. To the listener, it is a soporific hum. Substantia. Possessio. Usucapio. The words blend together. The publicanus closes his eyes for a moment, standing upright. He runs the case of Lucius through his mind. He has the law on his side. The lex hieronica, or perhaps the local provincial code, is clear. Unpaid taxes remain a debt on the estate. Next case, the herald's voice snaps him back. The treasury versus Lucius, son of Marcus. This is it. He steps forward. He walks to the center of the floor. He feels the eyes of the crowd on his back. Lucius is there, looking small and defeated. He has brought a lawyer, a cheap one with a frayed toga. The publicanus unrolls his scroll. He does not make a speech. He reads the numbers. In the consulship of... He begins, reading the date of the exemption's expiry. His voice is flat, devoid of emotion. He is not accusing. He is reciting. The exemption granted to Marcus expired. For 20 years, the estate has paid no tribute. The total principal is 10,000 sesterces. The interest, calculated at the standard rate of 12% per annum, is... He reads the final figure. The number hangs in the air. It is a heavy number. Lucius's lawyer steps up. He begins to argue about hardship and intent. He claims Lucius did not know. He claims the records were lost in a fire. He claims the soil is poor. The magistrate listens, his chin resting on his hand. He taps a finger against his cheek. Tap, tap, tap. He has heard this story 1,000 times. He looks at the publicanus. He looks at the scroll. The seal on the document is authentic. The math is correct. The law is the law, the magistrate says. His voice is quiet, barely carrying to the back of the hall. The debt stands. He waves his hand. Dismissed. It is over in 5 minutes. All that waiting, all those hours of standing, for a 5-minute exchange. But it is not truly over. Now comes the paperwork. The judgment must be recorded. The publicanus goes to the scribe's desk, located to the side of the tribunal. The scribe is an overworked man with ink stains up to his elbows. He has a stack of wax tablets as high as a tower. Case? The scribe grunts, not looking up. Treasury versus Lucius. The publicanus replies. The scribe sighs. He pulls a fresh tablet. He begins to write. Scratch, scratch, scratch. The sound is loud in the small alcove. The publicanus has to dictate the details. He has to spell out the names. He has to repeat the figures. Did you say 10,000 or 12,000? The scribe asks, pausing. 10,000, the publicanus corrects patiently. The scribe smooths the wax with his thumb and writes it again. Once the tablet is written, it must be sealed. The magistrate's signet ring must be pressed into the hot wax, but the magistrate is still hearing cases. So, the publicanus must wait again. He stands by the scribe's desk, watching the dust motes float in the shaft of light coming from the high windows. He looks at the intricate carving on the capital of the nearest column. Acanthus leaves. He counts the leaves. 1, 2, 3, 4. He traces the curve of the stone with his eyes. It is perfect, unchanging logic frozen in stone, unlike the messy, fluid nature of human excuses. Finally, a break in the proceedings. A lictor brings the ring. The wax is heated over a small flame. The smell of melting beeswax fills the air, a smell that signals closure. The ring is pressed down. Squish. The image of the eagle is left in the red wax. The publicanus takes the tablet. This is his prize. It is a heavy slab of wood and wax, but to him, it is lighter than air. It is a completed task, a closed loop. He walks out of the basilica. The sun is now high overhead. The blinding light of the forum forces him to squint. The noise of the market rushes back in. Sellers shouting, donkeys braying, children playing. He feels a strange emptiness. The chase is done. Lucius will pay, or his land will be seized. It is no longer the publicanus's concern. It is now a matter for the collectors of assets. He walks towards a vendor selling hot sausages. He realizes he has not eaten since dawn. He buys a sausage wrapped in a fig leaf. He stands in the shadow of a statue, eating slowly. He watches the people walking by. He sees a group of slaves carrying a litter. The curtains are drawn. Inside sits someone wealthy, perhaps a partner in his own tax farming company, visiting from Rome. A socius. The publicanus thinks about the societas, the company, the entity that owns his labor. He is just a small cog in a massive machine that spans the Mediterranean. The tablet he just secured will eventually be converted into gold, which will travel to the coast, board a ship, and end up in a strong box in the Temple of Saturn in Rome. He imagines the journey of that gold, the slow creak of the wagon wheels, the slap of the waves against the hull of the ship, the clink of coins being counted by men in togas who have never touched a plow or a measuring rod. He finishes his meal. He wipes his hands on his tunic. There is no rest for the wicked, and certainly no rest for the bureaucrat. He has to go to the money changers next. The coins he collected yesterday need to be verified and exchanged for imperial currency before they can be shipped. He steps out of the shadow and back into the flow of the crowd. He merges with the stream of humanity, a gray figure in a colorful world, carrying the weight of the empire's greed in his mind. The basilica is left behind, its cool stone silence replaced once again by the roar of the midday sun. The publicanus navigates the crowd, clutching his leather pouch. It is heavy, pulling down on his belt. It contains the raw intake of the last few days, a chaotic jumble of currencies that must be purified. He approaches the stalls of the numerari, the money changers. These stalls are set up along the shady side of the forum, beneath the colonnade. They consist of sturdy wooden tables, reinforced with iron bands, known as mensae. Behind each table sits a man who looks as if he has been carved from the same hard wood as his furniture. The publicanus stops at a familiar stall. The money changer, a man named Titus with eyes that are perpetually narrowed, nods. There is no greeting. There is only the business of the metal. The publicanus upends his pouch. The coins spill out onto the table with a crash, a harsh, discordant clatter that turns heads for a moment before the crowd looks away. To the untrained eye, it is a pile of wealth. To Titus and the publicanus, it is a pile of problems. The Roman Empire is vast, and while the silver denarius is the standard, local currencies still circulate in the provinces. There are drachmas from Greece, tetradrachms from Egypt, bronzes from local city-states. They all have different weights, different purities, and different values. The tax farmer cannot send this scrap metal to Rome. He must convert it into imperial silver or gold, and so begins the assay, the testing. Titus picks up the first coin. It is a tetradrachm from Antioch. It is thick and chunky, bearing the profile of a long-dead king. He holds it up to the light. He spins it between his thumb and forefinger. He is looking for the seam, the telltale line that indicates the coin was cast in a mold rather than struck with a hammer. Cast coins are often fakes. This one passes the eye test. But now, the ear test. Titus drops the coin onto the hard wood of the table. Ring. It is a clear, bell-like sound. If it were lead-plated, it would have made a dull thud. The sound of silver is the sound of truth. Next, the scale. Titus places the coin on one side of a delicate bronze balance. On the other, he places a standard weight. The arm of the scale wavers. It tips slightly. The coin is light. It has been clipped. Someone, somewhere in the chain of commerce, took a knife and shaved a tiny sliver of silver off the edge. Light, Titus grunts. Discount of 4%. The publicanus nods. He expects this. It is the friction of the economy. Every hand that touches a coin wears it down, either by accident or by malice. Titus picks up a denarius. It looks Roman. It has the face of the emperor. But something is wrong. The color is slightly off, too shiny. Titus reaches for his lapis lidius, the touchstone. The touchstone is a block of dark, smooth basalt. It is the judge of all metals. Titus rubs the edge of the coin against the stone. Scrape. It leaves a mark. He compares the color of the streak to a set of needles made of gold and silver alloys of known purity. Copper core, Titus says, pointing to the streak. It's a fourré. A fourré is a plated coin, a copper blank dipped in silver, worthless to the state, but accepted by fools. The publicanus sighs. He took this coin yesterday from a fishmonger. He didn't check it closely enough. The loss comes out of his own pocket. He takes the fake coin back. He will drill a hole in it and nail it to his office door, a warning to himself and others. The process continues, coin by coin. Ring, weigh, rub, ring, weigh, rub. It is a slow, methodical alchemy. The pile of chaotic, dirty metal on the left is slowly transformed into a neat, stacked pile of approved silver on the right. The sensory details of the money changer's table are specific and overwhelming. The smell is metallic, a sharp, coppery tang that tastes like blood in the back of the throat. It transfers to the hands. The publicanus can feel the grime accumulating on his fingertips again. And the faces. Oh, the faces on the coins. Thousands of tiny portraits. Emperors, gods, animals, temples. They are worn smooth. The nose of Augustus is gone. The laurel wreath of Nero is a blur. These are the eroded symbols of power. The publicanus stares at them as they pass through his fingers. He wonders about the history of each coin. Who held it? What did it buy? A loaf of bread? A slave? A bribe? Now, they are just weight. The sun moves across the sky, shifting the shadows of the colonnade. The publicanus's back aches from leaning over the table. Titus's eyes are watering from the strain. Finally, the pile is sorted. The calculation of the exchange rate, the agio, begins. Titus takes a fee for the service. He takes a fee for the risk. He takes a fee because he can. The publicanus watches the abacus beads slide. He double-checks the math in his head. He argues over a fraction. The exchange on the drachma is 6-1, not 7. Titus pauses. He looks at the publicanus. He shrugs. He adjusts the bead. A small victory. The final transaction is made. The publicanus hands over the pile of mixed currency. In return, he receives a smaller, heavier bag. This one contains aurae, gold coins. Gold is different. Gold is heavy. It has a density that feels unnatural. A single gold coin is worth 25 silver ones. The bag fits easily in the palm of his hand, yet it represents the labor of 100 men. The publicanus ties the bag to his belt, on the inside of his tunic this time. The weight is comforting. It is condensed value. He leaves the shade of the colonnade. The noise of the market seems louder now. He feels lighter, having shed the burden of the loose change. But the responsibility is greater. He is now carrying gold. He walks towards the aerarium, the local treasury strongbox, where the tax firm keeps its holdings before shipment. It is a secure room near the temple, guarded by private security. The walk is tense. He scans the faces in the crowd. Does that man look too interested? Is that beggar actually a scout for a gang? The paranoia of the carrier sets in. He walks with a purpose, one hand resting on the hilt of the small dagger he carries beneath his cloak. He reaches the secure room. The guard recognizes him. He unlocks the heavy iron grill. The publicanus enters. The room is cool and dark. It is lined with chests. He finds the chest marked with his company's seal. He unlocks it with a key that hangs around his neck. He opens the lid. The glint of gold from inside greets him. He unties his pouch. He pours the gold coins into the chest. They do not clatter like the bronze. They settle with a heavy, soft sound. Chink, chink. He closes the lid. He locks it. He tugs on the lock to be sure. It is done. The money has been collected, counted, cleaned, exchanged, and stored. It has completed its journey through his hands. He steps back out into the light. He looks at his hands. They are stained gray again. He rubs them on his tunic, but the stain remains. It is the indelible ink of commerce. He takes a deep breath. The air smells of roasting meat and exhaust. He realizes the day is only half over. He has dealt with the money, but he hasn't dealt with the letters, the reports to Rome, the explanation of why the yield was low, the justification for the expenses. He turns towards his office. The circle continues. The gold is safe, but the ink is waiting. We return to the small, stifling office where our journey began. The afternoon sun is blazing now, baking the mud brick walls, turning the room into an oven. The publicanus sits at his desk. The physical labor of the day, the walking, the counting, the arguing, is over. Now begins the intellectual labor, the writing. He pushes aside the wax tablets. They are for temporary notes, for rough drafts. Now he needs papyrus. He needs permanence. He has to write the rations, the official accounts that will be sent to the Magister Societatis, the head of the tax farming company in Rome. He selects a fresh scroll. He unrolls it carefully, placing weights on the corners to keep it flat. The papyrus is pale yellow with a distinct grain running horizontally on the front side. He picks up his reed pen, the calamus. He inspects the nib. It is dull. He takes a small knife and sharpens the reed. Slice, slice. The sound is crisp. He tests the point on his thumb. Sharp enough. He dips the pen into the inkwell. The ink is black and viscous. He brings the pen to the paper. He pauses. The first word is always the hardest. He has to frame the narrative. He cannot just send numbers. He has to explain them. He has to justify why the wheat collection is down by 5%, the drought in the northern valley, and why the expenses for guards are up, bandit activity on the trade road. He begins to write. To the Honorable Magister, greetings. The script is small and tight. Papyrus is expensive. You do not waste space. He writes in columns. He lists the villages visited. He lists the names of the local magistrates he has bribed, calling them gifts for facilitation. The room is silent except for the scratching of the reed. Scritch, scratch, scritch, scratch. It is a lonely sound. He writes about the customs dues. He details the incident with the honey merchant. He explains why he let the man pass without breaking the seals. He frames it as a strategic decision to maintain good relations with the guild, rather than a moment of fatigue. In the report, he is always competent, always in control. The report is a fiction of efficiency. A fly lands on the wet ink. He swears softly. He tries to flick it away, but it smears the letter S into a black blob. He stares at the smudge. He cannot erase it. He cannot scrape papyrus like he can wax. He has to strike it out and write above it. It looks messy. It bothers him. He continues. He writes about the exchange rates. He complains about the quality of the local coinage. He suggests that the company should pressure the Senate to mint more silver for the province. He knows this suggestion will be ignored, but he writes it anyway. It shows he is thinking. It shows he is proactive. The sun begins to lower. The light in the room changes from a harsh white to a soft, dusty orange. The shadows lengthen. He strains his eyes. He has to light the lamp. He strikes a spark with flint and steel. He lights the wick. The smell of burning olive oil fills the room. It is a heavy, greasy smell. The flame flickers, casting moving shadows on the papyrus. The letters seem to dance. He rubs his eyes. They burn. The smoke from the lamp irritates them. This is the occupational hazard of the scribe. Poor eyesight and a constant headache. He reaches the section on personnel. He has to report on his underlings, the slaves, the freedmen, the local hires. He writes that the new clerk is slow but honest. He writes that the guard captain is drinking too much. He holds the power of employment in his pen. With a sentence, he can have a man fired or flogged. He tries to be fair, but he is tired. He writes that the guard captain is reliable, deciding to spare him for now. He is thirsty. He reaches for his water cup. It is empty. He is too focused to get up and refill it. He licks his dry lips and keeps writing. He is now summarizing the total revenue. This is the most important part. The bottom line. He adds up the columns. He checks the sum on his abacus. Clack, clack. He writes the final figure in Roman numerals. It is a long string of letters. MMDCCCXX. He looks at the number. It represents enough wealth to buy a small island. Yet, his share of it will be a pittance, a salary, maybe a small bonus if the partners are generous. He feels a flash of resentment. He is the one inhaling the dust, sweating in the fields, fighting with the merchants. They are the ones eating grapes in their villas on the Palatine Hill. But he suppresses the thought. It is dangerous. He finishes the letter. May the gods grant you fortune. He sprinkles sand on the wet ink to dry it. He waits. He watches the sand turn black as it absorbs the ink. He blows the sand off. It scatters across the desk, adding to the layer of grit that is always present. He rolls up the scroll. He ties it with a red string. Now, the seal. He lights a stick of sealing wax. He lets the red drops fall onto the knot. Drip, drip, drip. The wax is hot and smells of pine resin. He presses his signet ring into the soft blob. He holds it there for a moment, letting it cool and harden. He lifts the ring. The impression is sharp. A lion's head. His mark. The scroll is now a missile. It will be given to a courier tomorrow. It will travel hundreds of miles. It will cross the sea. It will be opened by hands with manicured nails. It will be read, filed, and likely forgotten. But for now, it is done. He leans back in his chair. His back cracks. He stretches his arms. The room is almost dark now, save for the pool of light from the lamp. He looks at the desk, the mess of tools, the knife, the pen, the sand, the wax, the detritus of administration. He feels a sudden, overwhelming urge to leave this room, to be anywhere but here. He stands up. He blows out the lamp. The darkness is instant and total. He navigates to the door by memory, his hand trailing along the rough plaster of the wall. He steps outside. The air is cooler now. The stars are out. He looks up. The constellations are the same here as they are in Rome. It is the only thing that connects him to home. He takes a deep breath of the night air. It smells of cooling earth and distant cooking fires. He begins to walk, not towards his house, but towards the edge of the town. He needs to see something that isn't a wall or a ledger. He walks to the town wall. He climbs the steps to the rampart. The guard nods to him. He leans on the stone parapet and looks out into the darkness. Out there is the wilderness, the frontier, the places where the tax collectors do not go, the places where the tribes live, where the laws of Rome do not apply. For a moment, he envies them. They do not have ledgers. They do not have quotas. They do not have to account for every grain of wheat. But then he shivers. It is cold, and out there is no bathhouse. There is no wine shop. There is no order. He turns his back on the dark horizon. He looks back at the town, the faint glow of lamps from the windows, the grid of the streets, the structure. He is a creature of structure. He hates it, but he needs it. He walks back down the steps. He heads for home. Tomorrow, the courier will leave. Tomorrow the cycle begins again. We leave the town and the fields behind now, traveling towards the coast. But we are not going to a harbor or a beach for leisure. We are heading to the marshes, the desolate flatlands where the sea meets the earth in a muddy, stagnant embrace. We are going to the Salinae, the salt pans. Salt is the lifeblood of the empire. It preserves meat, it flavors food, it is used in medicine, and it is paid to soldiers, the root of the word salary. Because it is essential, it is controlled. The Roman state holds a monopoly on salt production, and naturally, they lease the management of this monopoly to our friends, the publicani. The journey to the salt pans is unpleasant. The road dissolves into a track of crushed shells and hard-packed mud. The air changes. It becomes heavy, thick with moisture and the smell of sulfur and brine. It is a smell that sticks to the back of the throat. The publicanus arrives at the facility. It is a vast grid of shallow pools dug into the clay soil. The logic here is simple, slow, and solar. Seawater is let into the first pool, then sealed off. The sun beats down. The water evaporates. The brine becomes concentrated. It is moved to the next pool, and the next, until only the white crystals remain. The publicanus stands on a narrow earthen dike separating two pools. The sun is reflecting off the water and the white crust of the salt. The glare is blinding. It is a world without shadow, a world of pure, painful white light. He squints, pulling his hood low, but the light seems to bounce up from the ground itself. His job here is monitoring. He is watching water dry, literally. He has to ensure that every bushel of salt extracted is recorded. The workers here are often convicts or slaves of the lowest order. They move slowly in the heat, their skin darkened by the sun and scarred by the salt. Salt is corrosive. It eats at clothes, it eats at leather, and it eats at skin. If you have a cut, the air alone stings it. The publicanus holds a tally stick. He watches a line of men carrying baskets of wet, grayish salt from the final drying pan to the warehouse. 1 basket, 2 baskets, 3 baskets. He has to check the quality. He stops a worker. He reaches into the basket. The salt is damp and coarse. He rubs it between his fingers. It feels sharp, like crushed glass. He tastes a grain. It is intensely salty, with a bitter aftertaste of magnesium. It is gray salt, not yet refined. He waves the man on. The tedium of the salt pans is different from the fields. In the fields, things grow. There is life. Here, the process is one of reduction, of drying out, of death in a way. The landscape is barren. No trees grow here, no birds sing, except for the occasional cry of a gull. It is a silent, industrial wasteland. The publicanus walks to the warehouse. It is a long wooden shed, raised on stilts to keep the floor dry. Inside, mountains of salt are piled high. The air is dry and dusty with salt particles. You can taste it with every breath. It dries out the mouth instantly. The publicanus is constantly thirsty, reaching for his water skin every few minutes. He has to audit the stockpile. He has to estimate the volume of these white mountains. Geometry again. Cones of salt. Pyramids of salt. He measures the base of a pile. He estimates the angle of repose. He calculates the volume. He multiplies by the density of salt. The numbers tell him how much inventory is on hand. But salt is tricky. It absorbs moisture from the air. On a humid day, the pile gets heavier. On a dry day, it gets lighter. The publicanus has to account for the weather. He has to apply a shrinkage factor. He argues with the manseps, the foreman of the salt works. The foreman claims 50 bushels were lost to rain. The publicanus checks the roof. He sees a hole. He notes it. Was the hole an accident? Or was it made on purpose to explain missing salt that was actually sold on the black market? Salt smuggling is rampant. Everyone needs it. If a worker can slip a bag out the back, he can sell it easily. The publicanus has to be a detective. He checks the perimeter fence. He looks for footprints in the mud outside the designated paths. He finds a set of tracks leading away from the drying pans towards the reeds of the marsh. He follows them for 100 paces. They disappear into the water. A boat was waiting there. A small theft, maybe a few sacks. He sighs. It is too late to catch them. He walks back. The mud sucks at his sandals. Shalop, shalop. The sound is gross and wearying. He returns to the dike. The sun is at its zenith. The heat is oppressive. The evaporation is at its peak. He can almost see the water turning into vapor. He checks the sluice gates. These are the wooden barriers that control the flow of seawater. They are encrusted with barnacles and salt crystals. They must be maintained. If a gate fails, the dilution could ruin weeks of evaporation. He notes that the iron hinges are rusting. Salt eats iron. Everything here is decaying. He sits on a wooden crate to rest his legs. He looks at his own sandals. The leather is stiff and white with salt stains. The metal buckles are corroded. This job is ruining his clothes. He will have to expense a new pair of sandals. He makes a mental note to add it to the ledger. He watches the crystals forming on the surface of a nearby pool. It starts as a thin, fragile film, like ice. Then it thickens. It sinks. It is a slow, geological process happening in real time. It is mesmerizing in a dull, repetitive way. The afternoon drags on. The glare gives him a headache behind the eyes. The silence is heavy. He thinks about the destination of this salt. Some of it will go to Rome to preserve the pork for the dole. Some will go to the legions on the Rhine to salt their venison. Some will be used to make garum, the fish sauce that Romans put on everything. This white powder, scraped from the mud, will flavor the empire. But here, it is just a chore. It is just weight. Finally, the sun begins to dip. The glare softens. The white pans turn a soft pink, reflecting the sunset. It is a moment of stark beauty in a harsh place. The workers stop their carrying. They wash their tools in fresh water, a precious resource here, to stop the corrosion. They wash their legs. The publicanus closes his tally book. The numbers are recorded. The harvest of the day is accounted for. He walks back to his cart. The horse is waiting, swatting flies with its tail. Even the horse looks miserable, its coat dusted with salt. The ride back to town is slow. The publicanus feels sticky. The salt dust has mixed with his sweat to form a layer of brine on his skin. He itches. He feels like he is being cured like a ham. He dreams of the bathhouse, of fresh, non-salty water, of oil. As the cart rattles along the shell road, he hears the crunch of the wheels. Crunch, crunch. It sounds like he is crushing bones. He looks back one last time at the Salini. In the twilight, the white pools glow like ghostly eyes staring up at the sky. They never blink. They never sleep. They just wait for the sun to return so they can dry out a little more. And he will have to return with them, to watch, to count, to taste the bitterness of the earth. The morning begins not with a sunrise, but with the planting of a spear. In the corner of the forum, a long wooden shaft with an iron tip is driven into the packed earth. Thud. It stands upright, quivering slightly. This is the hasta. For centuries, it has been the universal symbol of a Roman auction. Where the spear stands, property changes hands. Where the spear stands, a life is about to be dismantled. The publicanus stands next to the spear. He is not the one shouting the prices. That is the job of the praeco, the crier. The publicanus is there to keep the score. He is the grim accountant of loss. Today is the day the estate of Lucius, the man we saw defeated in the basilica, is liquidated to pay his tax debt. The law has taken its course. The scroll from the archive did its work. Now the physical reality of that debt is piled up in the middle of the square. It is a sad, dusty pile. When you strip a house of its contents, you realize how much of a life is just stuff. Worn, chipped, stained stuff. The publicanus holds a new wax tablet. He has ruled 2 columns into the wax, one for the item description, one for the sale price. He checks the inventory list provided by the court lictors. Item 1, a dining couch, maple wood, bronze fittings, upholstery worn. Item 2, a set of 6 silver spoons, 2 tarnished. Item 3, a bronze lampstand, slightly bent. The crowd begins to gather. These are not the high-rolling merchants we saw at the port. These are the scavengers, second-hand dealers, neighbors looking for a cheap tool, freedmen looking to furnish their first apartments. They circle the pile, poking at the upholstery, tapping the pottery to check for cracks. They are like vultures, but quieter. They calculate value with their eyes. The praeco steps up on a small wooden crate. He has a loud, brassy voice that cuts through the morning air. He clears his throat. Citizens, we proceed under the authority of the treasury, the goods of Lucius, all sales final, payment in cash immediately. He picks up the first item, a bronze wash basin. He holds it up. It catches the sunlight. Who will start me at 10 denarii? 10? Do I hear 10? A fine basin, solid bronze. Look at the workmanship. Silence. The crowd stares. 10 is too high. They know it. The auctioneer knows it. It is a ritual dance. 5? Surely 5 for this magnificent basin. A hand goes up. A man in a gray tunic. 5 to the man in gray. Do I hear 6? 6. Going at 5. 6, calls a woman near the front. 6. Do I hear 7? The publicanus waits. His stylus hovers over the wax. He doesn't care who buys it. He only cares about the number. Sold for 6. Scratch. The publicanus writes, basin, ze, 6 denarii. The debt is 10,000. 9,994 to go. The morning drags on. The sun climbs higher, heating the stones of the forum. The pile of goods slowly diminishes, item by item. The auction is a study in the banal. We often imagine history as a series of great events, but mostly it is the exchange of old kitchenware. A bundle of garden hose, iron heads, handles replaced, sold for 2 denarii. A woolen cloak, dyed red, moth hole in the hem, sold for 3 denarii. A box of papyrus scrolls, Greek philosophy, no bidders. The crowd doesn't read Greek. Sold for 1 denarius to a scrap merchant who will likely boil them down for the glue. The publicanus records it all. His hand begins to cramp. The repetition is numbing. Item, price. Item, price. He watches the faces of the buyers. There is a specific look of satisfaction when they get a bargain. A small, petty victory. They don't think about the man who lost these things. They only think about the money they saved. Lucius is not here. He is likely hiding in a relative's house, or perhaps he has already left town to start over in a province where no one knows his name. But his presence is felt in the intimacy of the objects. The praeco holds up a child's toy, a small wooden horse on wheels. It is painted with bright colors, now faded. The paint is chipped on the nose where it must have been banged against a wall. A toy horse, the praeco says, his voice losing a bit of its boom. 1 as? An as is a small bronze coin, lowest denomination. No one bids. It is just a piece of wood. Throw it in with the kitchen pots, someone shouts. The auctioneer nods. He bundles the horse with a stack of clay pots. The lot sells for 4 denarii. The publicanus writes, kitchenware and misc, 4. The toy horse becomes misc. A childhood memory is converted into a ledger entry. Now come the larger items. The livestock. The animals are tethered nearby. A mule, 2 oxen, a few goats. The smell of the animals mixes with the dust. The oxen are calm, chewing their cud, oblivious to the fact that their ownership is being transferred. The publicanus has to verify the sale of the oxen carefully. Beasts of burden are res mancipi, a special category of property in Roman law that requires formal transfer procedures. A pair of oxen, yoke broken, good health, 6 years old. Bidding is brisk. Farmers know the value of oxen. 300, 350, 400. The price climbs. The publicanus feels a flicker of relief. These big-ticket items will eat into the debt faster. Sold for 520. Scratch. Oxen. DXX. He does a quick mental tally. They are at about 4,000. Still not halfway there. Then the slaves. This is the part of the job the publicanus dislikes the most. Not out of a modern sense of morality. He is a Roman, after all, and slavery is as natural to him as the air he breathes, but because of the paperwork. Selling people is complicated. You have to declare their nationality, their skills, their defects. If you fail to mention a slave has a tendency to run away or suffers from epilepsy, the buyer can sue to reverse the sale months later. There are 3 slaves from Lucius's household, an old steward, a cook, and a young girl who worked in the weaving room. They stand on a raised platform, the catasta. Their feet have been whitened with chalk, a symbol that they are for sale. They look down at the ground. The auctioneer starts with the cook. A master of sauces can roast a pig whole, 40 years of age. The bidding is decent. Good cooks are valuable. He sells for 2,000. The steward is harder. He is old. He has arthritis. No one wants an old slave who can't work the fields. He sells for a pittance, likely to be a doorkeeper in a cheap tavern. The weaving girl. She is young. The bidding is aggressive. The publicanus records the price. It is high. He looks at the total. They are getting close to the 10,000 mark. The sun is now beating down directly on the publicanus's head. He is thirsty. The dust from the shuffling crowd is coating his throat. The noise of the auctioneer is a constant rhythmic drone. Going, going, gone. Going, going, gone. It is like a metronome counting down the dissolution of a household. Finally, the last item, the empty chests that held the clothes. 3 wooden chests, cedar, good condition, sold. The preco steps down. He wipes his brow with a rag. He looks exhausted. The crowd disperses quickly, carrying their loot. The square is empty again, save for the spear, the publicanus, and the auctioneer. The publicanus sits on the edge of the fountain and sums the column. Total, 10,432. They covered the debt. There is a surplus of 432. According to the law, this surplus must be returned to Lucius. The publicanus has to write a voucher. He has to arrange for the money to be held until Lucius or his agent claims it. More paperwork. He looks at the empty space where the pile of goods had been. There is nothing left, just scuff marks in the dust and a few tufts of straw. He feels a heavy sense of finality. A family took generations to accumulate that pile. It took 4 hours to scatter it to the winds. He stands up. He packs his stylus. He nods to the auctioneer. Good day, the auctioneer says, his voice hoarse. Good day, the publicanus replies. He walks back across the forum. The spear is pulled from the ground. Shk. The hole it leaves is small. The wind blows dust over it. Within minutes, the hole is filled. It is as if nothing ever happened. But the numbers are in the wax. The numbers are eternal. He heads towards the office to transfer the auction record to the permanent papyrus. The day is not over. The money collected from the buyers, bags of mixed coins again, has to be counted and secured. He walks past a shop selling household goods. In the window, he sees a bronze basin, identical to the one sold this morning. It shines, new and hopeful. He looks away. He keeps walking. Left, right, left, right. The rhythm of his sandals on the stones matches the throbbing of his headache. The sun has moved past its zenith, and the harsh, direct light of midday has softened into the slanting golden haze of the late afternoon. The auction is a memory. The crowd has dispersed. But for the publicanus, the most critical phase of the transaction remains. The conversion of physical goods into abstract wealth is complete. Now that wealth must be secured. We retreat to the inner sanctum of the tax office, a room with reinforced doors and no windows, lit only by oil lamps even during the day. This is the thesaurus, the strong room. The air here is cool and still, smelling of stone and metal. On the heavy oak table lies the harvest of the auction, a mound of silver and bronze. It is the liquid form of Lucius's estate. It looks less like a tragedy now and more like a logistical problem. The publicanus stands before the pile. Beside him is a stack of heavy canvas bags known as ficina. These are not ordinary sacks. They are woven from coarse, sturdy hemp, double-stitched at the seams. They are designed to hold weight, to endure the friction of a wagon bed, and to resist the knife of a casual thief. The task is involucrum, packaging. He picks up the first bag. He holds it open. He begins to scoop the coins. Scoop, pour, scoop, pour. The sound is akin to water rushing over a riverbed, a continuous metallic fluid noise. He does not just fill the bag blindly. He counts as he pours. Every 100 denarii constitutes a unit. He places a small wooden tally, a tessera, into the bag after every 1,000 coins. This tessera is marked with his own seal. It is a promise. It says, "I, the collector, certify that this layer contains 1,000. When the bag is full, it is heavy, incredibly heavy. A sack of silver is a dead weight, dense and unyielding. He lifts it, testing the strain on the fabric. It holds. Now comes the closing. This is not a matter of simply tying a bow. This is a security protocol that has been refined over centuries. He gathers the neck of the bag. The canvas bunches up, stiff and resistant. He grips it tight with his left hand. With his right, he takes a length of leather cord. He winds the cord around the neck, once, twice, 3 times. He pulls it tight. The leather creaks. Creak. He ties a knot, a square knot, then a surgeon's knot. But knots can be untied, knots can be retied. A knot is not proof. He reaches for the needle. It is a large bronze needle, thick as a nail. He threads it with a thinner waxed twine. He pushes the needle through the gathered fabric of the bag's neck, below the leather cord. It requires force. He pushes with the palm of his hand, using a leather pad to protect his skin. Pop. The needle breaks through the layers of canvas. He pulls the twine through. He passes it back through the other side. He is sewing the bag shut, stitching the neck closed so that it cannot be opened without cutting the fabric itself. He loops the twine around the leather cord, integrating the structural tie with the tamper-evident stitch. He ties off the twine. Now, the final step, the signaculum, the seal. He takes a small lump of lead. Lead is soft, malleable, and permanent. He has a pair of pliers-like tongs, the bulla press. The jaws of the tongs are engraved with the official seal of the tax farming company, the Societas. He threads the ends of the twine through a hole in the lead lump. He slides the lead down until it rests tight against the knot. He takes the tongs. He positions the lead between the jaws. He squeezes. He squeezes with both hands. His knuckles turn white. He holds his breath. The lead resists, then yields. Crunch. He opens the tongs. The lead lump is now a flat disc. On one side, the image of the goddess Moneda. On the other, the abbreviated name of the province. He inspects the seal. It is perfect. The twine is trapped inside the lead. To open the bag, you must cut the twine. If the twine is cut, the seal falls off. If the seal falls off, the chain of custody is broken. If the chain of custody is broken, the publicanus is liable for the entire amount. He repeats this process, bag after bag, scoop, pour, count, tie, stitch, squeeze. It is a slow, rhythmic ritual. The room is silent except for the sounds of the work, the clink of the coins, the creak of the leather, the crunch of the lead. He prepares the manifest. He takes a sheet of papyrus. He writes down the number of bags. He writes down the weight of each bag. He writes down the seal number impressed on the lead. He makes 3 copies. 1 copy goes into the last bag, on top of the coins, before it is sealed. 1 copy is for the courier, who will transport the funds. 1 copy stays here, in the archive. Triplicate, the holy trinity of bureaucracy. He rolls up the scrolls. He seals them with wax. He looks at the row of bags sitting on the table. They are squat, ugly things, lumpy and gray, but they represent the lifeblood of the empire. They are the soldier's pay. They are the grain dole. They are the marble for the temples. He wipes his brow. The room is not hot, but the labor is intense. His fingers are sore. The needlework requires a dexterity that conflicts with the brute force needed for the lead press. His hands ache in a very specific way, a cramping in the thenar eminence, the muscle at the base of the thumb. He hears a knock at the heavy door, a specific knock. Rap, rap, rap. It is the guards, the custodes. He unlocks the door. 2 men enter. They are not soldiers of the Legion. They are private mercenaries hired by the tax firm. They wear chainmail and carry short swords. They are silent men. They do not smile. They look at the bags. They look at the publicanus. The handover begins. It is a transfer of anxiety. The publicanus points to the scale. Weigh them, he says. The guards lift each bag onto the large balance scale in the corner. They check the weight against the manifest. If a bag is light, even by an ounce, they will refuse it. They will not take responsibility for a light bag. Thump. The first bag hits the scale. The arm swings. It settles. The guard nods. Thump. The second bag. Thump. The third bag. It takes time. They check the seals. They pull on the cords to ensure they are tight. They inspect the stitching. They are looking for any sign of weakness, any excuse to reject the shipment. Finally, they are satisfied. The senior guard signs the manifest. He hands the copy back to the publicanus. Received. The guard grunts. That one word is the most beautiful thing the publicanus has heard all day. Received. The burden is lifted. The weight of that silver is no longer on his soul. It is on their cart. He watches as they load the bags onto a handcart. They wheel it out of the strong room. The wheels rumble on the stone floor. Rumble. Rumble. The publicanus stands in the doorway. He watches them go down the corridor towards the loading bay where the armored wagon waits. He watches until they turn the corner. He is alone in the strong room. The table is empty. The silence returns, but it is a lighter silence now. The metallic noise is gone. He looks at the floor. There are a few stray pieces of twine, a few crumbs of lead. He bends down and picks them up. He sweeps the dust from the table with his hand. He blows out the lamps in the strong room. The darkness rushes in, filling the corners. He steps out and locks the door. Click, clack. He tests the handle. Locked. He walks back to his main office. The sun is setting now. The light outside is a deep, bruised purple. The day is winding down. But there is one more task. There is always one more task. He has to balance the books for the day. He has to record that the shipment has left. He has to deduct the amount from the on-hand column and move it to the in-transit column. He sits at his desk. He picks up the stylus. He opens the ledger. He is tired. His shoulders are tight knots of tension. His eyes are dry. But the columns must balance. The numbers must align. He writes, Missum ad Romam, sent to Rome. He stares at the words, sent to Rome. He has never been to Rome. He was born in this province, educated here, hired here. He works for Rome. He collects for Rome. He sends his life's work to Rome, bag by heavy bag. But he is just a distant extremity of that great city, a fingertip gathering dust. He wonders idly as the stylus hovers over the wax, what happens to those specific coins? Will one of them end up in the hand of the emperor? Will one be tossed to a beggar in the Subura? Will one buy a cup of wine in a tavern by the Tiber? He will never know. He is just the filter, the funnel. He closes the ledger. The slap of the wood cover closing is the final punctuation mark of the workday. He stands up. He needs air. He needs to not look at a number for at least 12 hours. He walks to the window and pushes open the shutters. The cool evening breeze flows in. It smells of the sea and the dying fires of the town. He leans on the sill. He watches a star appear in the darkening sky. It is a steady, unblinking light. Like a coin nailed to the firmament, the silver has been sealed, the large debts auctioned off, and the harvest estimated. But the empire's hunger is not satisfied by the grand gestures alone. It feeds on the constant, low-level friction of daily life. We move now to the Macellum, the covered market, to witness the most annoying of all duties, the collection of the centesima rerum venalium, the 1% sales tax. This is not a tax on wealth. It is a tax on existence. Every time a coin changes hands for a good, the state demands its sliver. And you, the publicanus, are the one who must shave that sliver off. You enter the Macellum. It is a rotunda, a circular building with a domed roof that traps the noise and the smells. In the center is a water feature, a fountain meant to cool the air and wash away the blood of the butcher's block. The floor is slippery with discarded cabbage leaves, fish scales, and the melting water from the ice packed around the oysters. You are not here to shop. You are here to audit. You carry a specific ledger for this, the ratio operum publicorum. You approach the stall of a butcher, Alanius. He is a large man, his tunic stained with dark, dried blood. He is chopping ribs with a heavy cleaver. Thwack, thwack. He sees you coming. He does not stop chopping. The rhythm of the cleaver is a threat. You stand by his counter. You wait for him to acknowledge you. He takes his time. He wraps a cut of pork in a fig leaf for a customer. He takes the coins. He drops them into a wooden bowl. The log, you say quietly. The butcher sighs. He reaches under the counter and pulls out a wax tablet. It is greasy. It smells of raw meat. He slams it onto the counter. You open it. You have to check his sales against your observations. You have been watching him for the last hour from the shadows of a pillar. You counted 12 customers. The log shows 8. You missed 4 entries, you say. They were small, he grunts. Scraps. Awful. For the dogs. A sale is a sale, you reply. Dog food is taxable. You pick up the stylus. You have to calculate the tax on scraps. Let's say the sale was 4 asses. 1% of 4 asses. It is a fraction of a fraction. The math is absurd. The coin doesn't even exist to pay it. So, you have to aggregate. You sum up the day's sales. Total, 150 denarii. The tax is 1.5 denarii. 1 denarius and 2 sestertii, you state. The butcher stares at you. He wipes his hands on a rag. He reaches into his bowl. He counts the coins. He throws them onto the counter. They spin and settle. You pick them up. You mark the ledger. Paid. You move to the next stall, the fishmonger. Piscatrix. The smell here is sharper. The fish are laid out on marble slabs, mullet, sea bream, eels coiled like snakes. The fishmonger is spraying them with water to keep them glistening. Fresh catch, she says, forcing a smile that doesn't reach her eyes. You look at the fish. You look at her prices. The price of mullet is up, you note. Storms, she says. Boats couldn't go out. Supply is low. So the tax is higher, you conclude. She scowls. She knows the logic. Higher price, higher percentage. She hands you her tally. You check the entries. 3 mullets, 1 eel, a basket of clams. You have to verify the weights. You pick up a mullet. It is slippery and cold. You place it on your portable scale. It matches the entry. You put it back. You wipe your hand on your tunic, adding fish slime to the layers of dust and ink. The problem with the sales tax is the sheer volume of transactions. Hundreds of small exchanges happen every hour. You cannot check them all. You have to use fear. You have to make examples. You spot a boy selling eggs from a basket near the entrance. He is not a registered stallholder. He is a freelancer. He is trying to avoid the market fee and the tax. You walk over to him. He sees you. His eyes go wide. He considers running, but he has a basket of fragile eggs. He cannot run. You stand over him. License? He shakes his head. Tax? He holds out a handful of copper coins. It's all I have. You look at the eggs. They are brown and speckled, small things. You calculate the value of the basket, maybe 2 denarii total. The tax would be negligible, a fraction of a copper. But the law is the law. If you let him go, the butcher will complain. The fishmonger will complain. They pay for their stalls. They pay their tax. They hate the freelancer more than they hate you. You take 1 coin from his hand. Go, you say. Sell outside the gates. He scampers away. You record the coin under miscellaneous fines. You continue the circuit, the vegetable seller, the holitor. Here, the goods are cheap. Cabbages, turnips, onions. The margins are razor thin. The tax here feels particularly cruel. 1% of a turnip? The seller argues that half his stock is rotting. He shows you a wilted lettuce. How can I pay tax on this? It's garbage. You have to inspect the garbage. You have to agree that, yes, this lettuce is unsellable. You grant a deduction for spoilage. He looks relieved. You feel a tiny flicker of humanity. You saved him a fraction of a penny. You move to the spice merchant. Here, the smells change. Pepper, cinnamon, saffron. The air is dry and sneezing-inducing. The goods here are high value. A small bag of pepper is worth more than the butcher's entire pig. The merchant here is slick. He has a polished smile. He offers you a drink. You decline. Let's see the import duties, you say. He produces a scroll. Already paid at the port in Alexandria. You check the seal. It looks authentic. But you know the game. He likely imported 10 bags and declared 5. But you cannot prove it here. You can only tax what he sells here. You watch a transaction. A wealthy matron buying saffron. The scales are tiny, delicate things used for gold dust. The saffron is weighed in grains. The price is astronomical. You calculate the 1%. It is a significant sum. The merchant pays it without blinking. He has already priced it into the cost. The matron is paying the tax, she just doesn't know it. The afternoon wears on. The macellum gets hotter. The ice melts. The fish smell gets stronger. The noise is a constant headache-inducing drone of haggling. How much? Too much. I'll give you half. Robbery. Fine, take it. And behind every take it, you are there, the silent partner in the deal. Your ledger is filling up with hundreds of tiny numbers. 2. A fee. I. V. It is a swarm of gnats made of ink. You reach the end of the circle. You are back at the fountain. You wash your hands. The water is cool. You watch the blood from the butcher's stall swirl in the drain. You look up at the dome. The oculus, the round opening in the center, shows a circle of blue sky, a perfect, tax-free circle. You think about the emperor in Rome. Does he know that his grand palaces are built on the backs of turnip sellers and egg boys? Does he care about the 1% of a mullet? Probably not. He only cares about the total, the bottom line. And you are the one who has to aggregate the misery of the market into a single, clean number. You close the ledger. You secure the bag of small change, heavy with copper, light on silver. It drags down your belt. You walk out of the macellum. The fresh air outside hits you. It tastes sweet after the stale air of the market. But you can still smell the fish on your fingers. You can still hear the thwack of the cleaver. You have collected the pennies. The empire is safe for another day. We leave the claustrophobia of the town walls behind us. The ledger is closed, the strong room is locked, but the work of the publicanus is not stationary. The empire is a network, and sometimes the node must move. He has been summoned to the provincial capital to audit the regional accounts. This means travel. Travel in the Roman world is often romanticized. We think of the great paved roads, the engineering marvels that span continents. And they are marvels. But to travel them is to endure a specific kind of physical punishment. The publicanus is seated in a reta, a heavy, four-wheeled carriage. It is a box on wheels. Crucially, it has no suspension, no springs, no shock absorbers. The axles are attached directly to the chassis. The wheels are iron-rimmed. The road is paved with large polygonal basalt stones. Clack-jolt, clack-jolt, clack-jolt. Every seam in the stone, every uneven patch, sends a shockwave up through the wheels, through the wooden floorboards, through the thin cushion, and directly into the publicanus's spine. It is a rhythmic beating. It rattles the teeth. It vibrates the skull. He tries to read a scroll. It is impossible. The text jumps and blurs before his eyes. He tries to write. The stylus skids across the wax, making jagged, illegible marks. He is forced to do the one thing he hates most: nothing. He stares out the window. The landscape is a slow-moving tapestry of brown and green. Olive trees, vineyards, scrubland. Olive trees, vineyards, scrubland. It repeats on an infinite loop. The speed is excruciatingly slow. A heavy carriage manages perhaps 3 or 4 miles an hour. A walking pace. He could get out and walk, but that would be undignified for an official. So he sits. He endures. He fixes his eyes on the side of the road, looking for the miliarium, the milestone. These are tall, cylindrical stone columns, standing like sentries every 1,000 paces. They are carved with the name of the emperor who built the road and the distance to the next city. He sees one approaching. He squints to read the number. 53 miles. He closes his eyes. He counts the jolts. He waits. Minutes pass. The carriage creaks and groans. He opens his eyes. Another milestone. 52 miles. 1 mile. It took 20 minutes. At this rate, the journey will take days. The heat inside the carriage builds up. The curtains are drawn to keep out the dust, but that just traps the air. It smells of old leather, horse sweat, and the garlic the driver ate for breakfast. The dust is the true enemy. It finds its way through the cracks in the curtains. It is a fine, powdery grit. It coats the inside of his mouth. He grinds his teeth and feels the sand. He runs a hand through his hair. It feels stiff and dry. He thinks about the road itself, the via. It is a straight line imposed on a curved world. It cuts through hills, bridges over rivers, ignores the contours of the land. It is an act of dominance, but right now, it feels like a prison corridor. He shifts his position. His legs are cramping. He tries to stretch, but hits his shin against the trunk containing his clothes. He winces. The driver shouts at the mules. The whip cracks. Snap. The carriage lurches forward as they crest a small hill. For a moment, there is a breeze. Then, back to the grind. As evening approaches, the shadows lengthen, stretching across the road like bars. The driver calls back, "Mancio ahead!" The Mancio is an official way station, a state-run hotel for government officials. It is not a luxury resort. It is a functional box for sleeping. The carriage pulls into the courtyard. The publicanus climbs down. His legs are stiff. He wobbles as his feet hit the ground. His whole body is still vibrating, a phantom echo of the road. He is greeted by the station master. The bureaucracy continues here. He has to produce his diploma, his official travel warrant. It is a small bronze tablet that proves he is on state business. Without it, he sleeps in the stable. The station master checks the seal. He nods. He assigns a room. The room is small. It has a bed, a stool, and a hook on the wall. The plaster is peeling. There is a graffiti scratched into the wall by a previous traveler. Lucius was here, and the wine is vinegar. The publicanus sighs. He drops his bag. He checks the bed. The mattress is stuffed with straw. He presses his hand into it. It rustles. He looks closely. He sees a small movement, a flea. He knows he will not sleep alone tonight. He goes to the common dining room. The food is standard issue, a stew of questionable meat, hard bread, and the wine, which, as the graffiti predicted, is sour. He eats mechanically. He is surrounded by other travelers, a centurion heading to the frontier, a courier carrying imperial dispatches, a corn merchant. They exchange brief nods, but little conversation. They are all tired. They are all covered in the same gray dust. They are united by the misery of the road. The publicanus returns to his room. He lights a small lamp. He decides to check his personal cash box. He opens it. He counts the coins. He is paranoid. The road is full of latrones, bandits. Even in the Mancio, one cannot be too careful. He sleeps with the box under his head, using it as a hard, uncomfortable pillow. He lies in the dark. The straw prickles through his tunic. The fleas begin their work. He scratches. Scritch, scritch. He listens to the sounds of the station, the snoring from the next room, the stamping of horses in the stable, the shout of a guard changing shift. He thinks about the distance remaining. 52 miles. 2 more days of shaking. 2 more days of dust. He closes his eyes and tries to visualize the ledger. He counts sheep again. But tonight, the sheep are running down the Appian Way, and he cannot catch them. He drifts into a fitful sleep, dreaming of a road that never ends, a straight gray line stretching out into eternity, lined with milestones that all read zero. He is ready to sleep, really sleep, without counting. Sleep, sleep, sleep. Good night. If this journey through the duller side of history helped you unwind and maybe even drift off, please let me know. First, hit that like button if you enjoyed this historical lullaby. Second, subscribe to the channel so you don't miss future installments of history too boring to keep you awake. Finally, I'd love to hear your thoughts. Drop a comment below about which historical topic you find so mundane. It deserves to be our next sleepy video. Your suggestions will shape our journey into the world's most delightfully dull past.